Good morning, everyone. I welcome you to the second lecture on Book 3 of the epic poem The Iliad, written by Homer, a duel and a Trojan view of the Greeks. I'm just going to give you a quick summary of what we had covered in the last lecture. In the last lecture, we had talked about how both the forces, the Greek force as well as the Trojan force, were facing each other and they were readying for battle and moving or progressing towards each other. The Trojans were moving towards the Greeks with shrieking voices, whereas the Greeks were moving in a very disciplined manner towards the Trojan forces. And Paris, who tries to act as the champion of the Trojan side, comes out of the rank in order to challenge the Greeks. But seeing Menelaus, he loses his courage and retreats back and is at the receiving end of the taunts given by his own brother Hector, who believes that Paris was nothing less than a curse on their family as well as the kingdom because he had invited trouble by abducting Helen, the wife of Menelaus. So I'm going to start the text where we left off yesterday. That was when Hector was taunting Paris for his cowardice and for the trouble that he had brought on the shores of Ilium. And Godlike Paris replies. Now, please note that Godlike Paris is an example of an epithet, as we have discussed it earlier as well. And epithet are phrases or adjectives that express a quality or characteristic of a person. So here, when it is called as when Paris is mentioned as godlike Paris, it is with reference to his looks. In a similar manner, when they talk about Menelaus, Homer writes warlike Menelaus because Menelaus was known to be a great warrior. So here, godlike Paris replied, and this is a reply which is being given to Hector, his own brother. He says, Hector, your taunts are justified, nothing more than I deserve. And he completely agrees that whatever you're telling me, or whatever harsh words that Paris was hearing from his own brother, were quite true and he deserved it. Your heart is tireless like an axe in the hands of a carpenter, hewing through the wood. So he knows that Hector is not very happy with the situation because the Greek forces had announced or brought a lot of trouble, and it could be at this point of time the result of destruction of Ilium or Troy, and that is why Hector was concerned for his own people. Paris says that Hector's heart is tireless. It's like an axe in the hands of a carpenter. A carpenter uses axe to hew through wood. Hew means, Hew means cut through wood. So the carpenter's skill shapes a ship's timbers, but the axe gives him strength he needs. So with you, your strength of purpose remains indomitable. So he says that just like a carpenter's axe gives him strength he needs, and he goes on continuously hewing through the wood in order to build a grand thing like a ship. His strength of purpose, Hector's strength of purpose, also remains indomitable, something which is unconquerable. And what was Hector's purpose in life? Hector's purpose in life was the safety and security of his own people. That is why he was getting angry at Paris. Paris continues and says, But don't hold against me the irresistible gifts I have from golden Aphrodite. So he says that whatever you're saying, I deserve it, but you should not blame me because it was the gift of Aphrodite which I had received. So here Paris tries to avoid taking responsibility, and he says that how could I, refrain myself or stop myself from accepting the gifts that Aphrodite, goddess Aphrodite, was giving me. The glorious gifts which the gods themselves choose to lavish on a man are not to be despised. Despised means hated. No man ever acquires them by his own efforts. So Paris over here knows what has happened because of his actions, and he is presently in the midst of its consequence. What was the consequence? The impending battle that was going to happen, the Trojan War. But he says that it was only because he had accepted the gifts of the gods themselves, and whatever gods choose to lavish on a man, give freely to a man, man is not supposed to despise those gifts, hate those gifts, because those are the kind of gifts which they will not be able to acquire on their own accord. He says, "But now, if you want me to do battle and fight, and make the rest of the Trojans and all the Greeks sit down, and let me and warlike Menelaus meet in the middle to fight it over Helen, and all property I bought back with her, the one who wins and proves himself the better man can take all the property and the woman home, while you others can then swear solemn oaths of friendship with the enemy and remain in fertile Troy, while the Greeks return to horse grazing Thessaly and Achaia with its lovely women." Now, please note, I will reread this paragraph and count it to be important. Paris over here is proposing a duel. This is what is present in the name of the chapter as well, a duel. Paris says that since I am responsible for the two parties standing in front of each other, waiting for the battle or the war to happen, all the Trojans and the Greeks should probably sit down, and the two men involved, himself and the warlike Menelaus, should meet in the middle to fight it out. That fighting between these two people is what is called as the duel. He further says that the one who wins and proves himself the better man. Who will win and when will he win? If there is a fight happening between two people, when one of them dies, the other one emerges as the winner. So he says, the one who wins and proves himself a better man can take all the property and the woman home. So Helen is the woman, and all the other things and her maids who came along with her, that is being referred to as the property. He says that you and others can swear solemn oaths of friendship with the enemy and remain in fertile Troy. So once this duel decides the fate of Helen, who Helen is ultimately going to return to, then the rest of them can take solemn oaths of friendship and they can remain in fertile Troy, while the Greeks they can return to their own homelands with its lovely women. So Paris over here suggests a kind of solution, and this brings a lot of happiness and delight to Hector, because Hector was responsible for the protection of his own people. And if the fight would have ensued or begun, what would have happened was there would have been a lot of bloodshed, not just of the Trojan side but the Greek side as well. So he spoke, he is Paris, and Hector was delighted at his proposal. So remember, the duel was proposed by Paris. Sometimes in the objective question it comes in the MCQs or in the fill in the blanks. Who was the person who had proposed the duel? The answer that you're supposed to give is Paris. He stepped out into no man's land. No man's land was the stretch of land between the two armies. Okay. And grasping his spear by the middle, pushed the Trojan ranks back. So what he does is that he is the leader of the Trojan side. He comes out. He goes into the no man's land in between the two sides who have collected at that particular place, and he tries to make his men go back so that they can give space and they can sit down. They all sat down, but the long haired Greeks began to shoot at him, making Hector the target for their arrows and stones. Why do they do this? Because till this point of time, the Greeks do not know about the proposal of the duel. They do not understand that Paris has decided to fight with warlike Menelaus on a one-on-one hand basis. Then Agamemnon, Lord of Men, gave a great shout. Agamemnon is one of the leaders of the Greek side. He realizes what is happening and he tries to stop his men from attacking Hector. He says, Greeks, enough. Men, stop shooting. Hector of the flashing helmet, another epithet that is being used to describe Hector, looks as if he has something to say. So he spoke, and the troops abandoned their attack and immediately fell silent. Hector then spoke to both sides. So, in the next few lines, we see Hector addressing both parties, and he says, Trojans and Greek men at arms, hear from me what Paris, who began this trouble between us, now proposes. He suggests the rest of Trojans and all the Greeks ground their arms while he and warlike Menelaus meet in the middle and fight it out over Helen and all the property Paris brought back with her. So Hector relays to both sides the discussion that he had with his brother Paris, and he informs that they should all put their arms at rest, they should put their weapons down because a duel was going to happen. And the two men, that is Paris and Menelaus, will fight it out in the middle, and they are fighting over Helen and all the property that Paris had brought back along with Helen. He continues and tells everybody, the one who wins and proves himself the better man can take all the property and the woman home, while we others can then swear solemn oaths of friendship. So he spoke, he is Hector, and was received in complete silence by them all. Then Menelaus, master of the battle cry, another epithet which is used to describe Menelaus. Till now we have three of them, warlike Menelaus, Menelaus son of Atreus, and this is the third one, Menelaus, master of battle cry, spoke to them. You will see a side note that Menelaus welcomes the duel, and in fact the Greek side also consider it to be a good enough solution. Menelaus gives a reply. Listen now to me too. I am the chief sufferer here. Menelaus was the man who had been wronged by Paris because Paris had abducted his wife. But I intend the Greeks and Trojans to part in peace this day, having had quite enough to endure as a result of this dispute between me and Paris, who began it all. So, Menelaus also understands that people have been waiting for a very long period of time, and we need to remind ourselves that this is the final year of war, the 10th year of war. And it's a long period of time that the Greek men have stayed away from their homes, and it was an inconvenience to them as well. So Menelaus wanted everything to get over with, and he was actually delighted and happy that he gets to face the man who had wronged him in order to take his revenge. He says, May the man who is marked out by death and destiny meet his end, and the rest of you will soon be reconciled. So he says that in the duel, one man is going to die and the other one is going to emerge as the winner, and he will be the one to whom Helen will go to. Now, before the duel can start, the Greeks and the Trojans have a tradition of praying to the gods. And the next few lines is going to be regarding that offering that they decide to make to the gods. Menelaus says, You Trojans bring 2 sheep, a white ram, and a black ewe. So he is very specific. Ram is a male sheep and ewe is a female sheep. Why does he need this? He needs this for the earth and the sun, and we will bring another ram for Zeus. And let mighty Priam be fetched so that he can take the oath himself, since he has arrogant and unscrupulous sons, that we do not want to see an oath in the name of Zeus wrecked by treachery. Here, what happens is that they decide to give offerings to God, and Menelaus is not trusting of these two brothers, that is, Paris and Hector, because he considers them to be very arrogant and unscrupulous. A person who does not have a lot of moral integrity. And as a result, what he says is, he says that the oath should be taken by their father, Priam, who is the king of Troy. He did not want to see an oath in the name of Zeus wrecked by treachery, marked by treachery. Young men are never dependable, but when an old man takes a hand in such affairs, he considers the future as well as the past, and the result is best for both parties. So Menelaus wanted Priam, their father, to take the oath representing these two men. So he spoke, and the Greeks and the Trojans were delighted at the prospect of a reprieve from the painful business of fighting. Now, these soldiers from the Greek side as well as the Trojan side, they wanted relief from this situation, and they obviously welcomed the proposal that was made by Paris. They drew up their chariots in ranks, got down, and removed their equipment, which they laid on the ground at close intervals. So all their weapons were put down on the ground. There was a little open space left around. Hector dispatched two heralds, heralds are messengers, at full speed to the town to fetch the sheep and summon Priam. Lord Agamemnon sent Talthybius off to the hollow ships and told him to bring back a lamb. Talthybius complied with godlike Agamemnon. So these are the preparations which are being made in order to make offerings to the god. The Trojans sent word to King of Troy, that is Priam, because Menelaus wanted Priam to take the oath on behalf of both his sons because he did not trust them. And Agamemnon sends one of his men to their ships so that he can bring back an offering, which they were going to offer it to god Zeus. We'll end the second lecture at this point today, and the next lecture we are going to talk about what the situation is at the town or city of Ilium, and how Helen is conveyed this information through a messenger goddess who goes and informs what is ultimately going to happen. She informs her regarding the duel that is going to take place and the two men, Menelaus and Paris, fighting over her. That will be covered in the next lecture. Thank you.